Okay, so this is the last page of the 1.2 notes, which is just kind of going to go over the graphing calculator a little bit, how to plot scatter plots on your graphing calculator, and how to draw um, lined graphs on your graphing calculator. So how to plug in this information all into your calculator. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this first section. So we're going to look at how you can do that and how to get your windows set up and how to get your calculator. So hopefully you're familiar with it. If you're not, again, there are a lot of tutorials out there besides just this video that can go over. You can YouTube, Google it, or whatever. They're out there. Especially if you're using a different calculator than I am. I am going to be using the 84. So if you've got an 84 or an 83 or even Inspire, this is very similar to Inspire. Except for things in the Inspire tend to be buried a little more. But if you're using an 84 or an 83, this will be the same. If you're using something different, you might want to watch a different video based on your calculator. Alright, so we've got our set of information here. So here's our two variable data set. Alright, so it's our Netflix subscriptions in millions over the years 2011 to 2015. Alright, and so those are the subscribers in millions. First thing is determine the max and mins. Set up appropriate viewing window, which I'm actually going to use when we get to the calculator. Make a scatter plot, make a line. So again, these are all going to be done on the calculator. Alright, what does the graph tell you once you get there? Alright, so first thing, I am going to make an adjustment just so that it shows up a little nicer on the calculator. So the first thing, before I get started, and you don't have to do this. Now, if you choose to leave the years 2011, 2012, 2015, then you just have to adjust your windows to those. I'm actually going to change those. I'm going to let the X value, instead of being the year, I'm going to let the X value be the years after the very first year listed, so after 2011. So what that means is 2011 is the X value 0. 2012 would be 1 year later, and so that's X value 1. 2015 would be 4 years after 2011. And so I'm going to change these to those values. So I'm going to put in like a blank spot above. So give me a second while I figure out how to do that on here. There we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my new X value. So X value is the year after 2011. Alright, so this is my new X values. Alright, so again, these will be the new X values that go with them. And so 2011, the new X value would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it just makes plugging it in the calculator and getting the window on the calculator and eyes. You don't have to do this. And if you don't do this, it's fine. You just have to make your window go up to the 2000s. Alright, and so instead of making my window go up to the 2000s, I can stay, as long as it goes up past 4. Alright, so I'm going to use this change, and so the first one is using my new X values, not my old one. What is the maximum X? What is the minimum X? And then same thing for the Y. Maximum Y, minimum Y. And this will help me out when I get to my window. Alright, so my biggest X value is 4. My smallest X value is 0. Now if you left it the other way, yours would have been 2011 would be your smallest, 2015 would be your largest. Now the Y values, the smallest Y value was that 25.1. The largest Y value was the 61.4. Alright, all the other values are smaller than that. Right, which is going to help me for my window. Alright, so when I go to set up my window, and I will have to do this on the calculator. Alright, I'm going to kind of use this. I want my maximum X value on my window. My minimum X value. We'll actually have to go in the calculator and change it. So my maximum Y value, my minimum Y value. Alright, now you could just use these if you want to, but I want a nice looking window and I want to be able to see my X-axis and Y-axis. So I tend to go to the negative so I can see everything. And so since 0 is the smallest and 4 is the biggest, I like to go past my answer. And so I'll probably do a maximum of 6, so I go past my point so I see it, so it's not on the edge of my page. And then same thing with the 0. I'm going to go -2 so that I can see it. So I'm going to go -2. And then the y's, I'm going to, again, do a little bit more adjusting than I have here. The minimum y is 25.1, but I like to see my axes. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to go and make sure I see that. So I'm going to go a minimum of -10. And then my maximum needs to go above 60. And I just like to keep things kind of nicely. I'll go 80. I will probably scale this, so when I get to the scale Y, since it goes -10 to 80, I'm going to probably scale by 10, and I'll talk about that when I get to the calculator. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm actually going to go on the calculator and make my scatter plot. So again, hopefully you have your calculators out and follow along. I am using a different program today because I think it's a little easier to have it blown up, so I'm using something on the internet, so bear with me. I may need some little new technology for me. Alright, so there's my TI-84 with all of the buttons on this side, and then there's the window, so it kind of makes the window big so that you can see it. Alright, so these should be all the buttons for the 84, and 83 should show up similar to what's on my screen here. In order to plug your table in, where you have to do that is under the stat key. So you hit the stat key, alright, so down here shows you what button I'm hitting. If you see on below that window, it shows you the button. Then you're going to hit edit, so it's the very first one selected, so I just hit one edit. Then you have L1 and L2. L1, always plug in your X values. So L1, I'm going to plug in my X values. So my X values were 0, enter, 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter, 4, enter. Now, if your calculator, so I'm going to scroll up to the top. If your calculator already has stuff in here, and you have to clear that out first. What you have to do to clear that, so I'm going to clear it out just so you show it, so I'm going to have to re-enter mine again. What you have to do is you have to go up here and highlight L1, and then you hit clear and enter, and it'll clear that list out. So if you had something in there to clear your list out, that's what you do. So since I did that, I have to go plug my numbers back in. Alright, so there's list 1. And then list 2, you plug in your Y values and make sure it's the Y values paired. So 0 was paired with 25.1. Enter. 2 was paired with 29.4. Or sorry, 1 was paired with, the next one was paired with 29.4. So 2, which was 2013, was 33.4. Enter. And then the next one was 53.1. Enter. And then 61.4. Enter. Alright, so I'm double checking, making sure I've paired them up right, my numbers are plugged in correctly. Alright, so 21.5, 29.4, 33.4, 53.1, and 61.4. Alright, so they're in there correctly. Alright, so I'm going to quit. So second mode, quit, and then I'm actually going to clear this out so that the buttons kind of start over again. Okay, so now I'm on my home screen and I want to graph those. And so how you graph those is you have to do a stat plot. And so if you look here, go to the very top of your, right underneath your screen, and you've got that Y equal to button. Above that Y equal to button, there's the phrase stat plot. And that's what we want to do. We just put our numbers in the statistics key. And so the stat key, right? That's where we plugged our numbers in. And so I want to go up here to stat plot, and so I've got to hit second Y equal, right? Second Y equal, and it takes me to the stat plot. And now all of these should be off, and after we do this, go in and turn them off again. All right, and I will do this on the video to remind you to do that. So just pick the first one, so I pick 1. And then it goes inside here, and this is what it should look like. This is the default. All right, so the first thing is go up here and turn it on. Alright, it's off. Now turn it on. So hit highlight on. And then the next thing should be type. And the type that should be listed here, this one should already be highlighted, which is points. Alright, so if it's not, make sure you highlight that, just that one. And then go down and check, make sure the X list is list 1, because that's where we put our X values. Make sure the Y list is list 2. And then the second part is just what your points are going to look like. I usually leave it the first one because I think those are the bigger points and they're easier to see. Alright, and so if you've turned it on, you're ready to go in and change your, not graph yet. Alright, that's just got the stat plot turned on. Now I have to go change my window so that I can see my stat plot. So now I'm going to go up here to my window keys. Alright, the window, usually by default, the window is a 10 by 10 window, meaning 10 in each direction, positive 10 and negative 10. And so there is my window, and that's what I'm going to change, my max and min. So first one, my X max, if you remember, I said I want a maximum of 6. So I'm going to change that to 6. Or, well, that was my max, but I'm on my minimum. Let's read the problem right. So my minimum, I wanted to change my X minimum to -2. Make sure you hit -2, not -2. My max was 6, and I'm going to leave it, this is scaled, this is how many dash marks you have. And so there's one dash mark between each number, so it's going to go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that order. Where I'll change the scale will be in my Y's. Alright, so my Y minimum, I'm going to leave it -10. My Y max, though, I was going to change to 80. And then this is the one where I'm going to change my Y scale. Scale just means how often my dash marks show up. And so if I leave it like this, I'm going to have 90 dash marks on my screen. Well, I'm not going to be able to see 90 dash marks because they're going to be all smushed together. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to scale it. A dash mark's going to show up every 10, meaning there'll be a dash mark at 10, at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50, and so on. And so I'm going to change this to scale by 10. Right, now that I've set my window up, alright, my max and mins are set up, my window's set up, now I can hit the graph key and you should be able to see your points on the graph. So I'm going to go ahead and hit graph, and there's my plot, which apparently I must have already had something in there, so I have to go to my y equal and clear that out. So if the same thing happens to you, go to your y equal, clear that out, and then hit graph again, and it should just now be my points. Alright, so there's my scatter plot. My graph on my calculator has done a scatter plot. Alright, so my next question was to make, so I've done my scatter plot. Alright, I've adjusted my windows, those are my windows, I've done it, so it's plotted these points on my calculator using the 0, 1 through 4. Alright, so I've done that, and so now I'm going to make a line graph. So basically it's the same place. I'm going to go back into my stat plot. So I'm going to go back up in here and hit second, the y equal 2. Alright, so I'm going to hit second, the y equal 2. It's going to take me back into my stat plot. So the one that's on here is plot 1, so I want to go there again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my type. The first type is a scatter plot. If you hit the over arrow, it takes you to the second type. So now I'm here. This is a line type. And so once you're highlighted there, hit enter, and it'll now graph that type. That type should now be highlighted, and everything else should stay the same. All right, so the only difference here is I've changed this from the first one, which is a scatter plot, to the second one, which is a line. And then hit graph, and what it does, it should connect the dots. There you go. I've graphed my points, and now I've connected the dots, and I've got my line graph. So that's how you do that on the calculator. And then the last question, after I've done all that, so I've graphed it, I've sketched my picture on my calculator, and then graphs are just nice because they give us kind of an idea of what's going on. Alright, and so what does the graph tell you? Well, it tells you the behavior of my points. And so if I go look at my graph, well, over the first few years it grew slower, right? There's growth, but it's a slow growth. But then over the last couple of years, right, 2014, 2015, I bet if we put in 2020, that would skyrocket up, right? It's growing, but it's growing much faster. And I can see that with the graph. It's easier to tell that with the graph than just by looking at the numbers in the data set. And so, again, in your own words, you can describe it. But what to me, the graph looks like, it's growing slowly from 2011 to 2013, and then it grows much faster from 2013 to 2015, right? Those are the years at the end where if you go look, that's shooting up much faster, right? 2013's here in the middle. 2014, there's a real big growth. In 2015, there's a pretty big growth. Alright, so it's growing a lot faster over those years, where it's growing all the time, but it's slow the first 3 years, and it's fast the last 2. And again, you can put that in your own words if you want to, but that's what's nice about graphs. It allows us to see the behavior of it visually. Alright, so again, hopefully you looked at that, know how to do it, and that finishes up our 2.1.